Um, Welcome to the mirror. Joshua, Kemi, can we all hear me?
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Hello. That shows my
Lovely. Let's wait for one more minute and then we'll start. All right. Um, you can all hear me, right? I think I'll get started. Wherever the rest catch up. Whenever the rest catch up with us, they would pick up from there. First things first, we need to understand the default way life works, right? Life generally tends to veer towards chaos, meaning everything that can go wrong will possibly go wrong. You can miss your alarm, you can get stuck in traffic, some appointments. Literally, there's a lot of variables to life, to anything you want to do. And for you to actually get the most out of your life, you need to create some level of orderliness to that chaos. Now, this is this is the ideal way life seems at most times. Chaotic, out of order, you know, just messy in general. And this is the life you want to live. Let's assume this is your goal, or this is you rather, this is your goal. Without order, you're just moving in a random sequence, trying to get here. You may never even get there, you may just end up being lost on the way. But when you create some level of order to your goal, you're able to take a step-by-step approach towards this goal to create the ideal life you are trying to build for yourself. Whatever it may be, whatever the goal may be, you need some level of orderliness. Otherwise, you just keep falling towards the chaotic default settings of life. And we don't want that. That's not the system we're trying to build. So, first things first, we have to define objectives because um you can't create a system. You can't be the ideal version of yourself if you have no clear objective of what that ideal version is. You get you won't be able to make that a reality. So one of the first steps is to define an objective. And there are three things I would like us to look at under defining an objective. The first would be a creative project, the second would be an ideal routine, and the third would be an ideal habit. Now, when I say a creative project, it could be anything, be growing your business, writing a book, winning a championship, finishing the best graduating student. Literally, the top most goal. There's a lot of things to backtrack because I believe some of you were not even in this class yesterday, and I don't know how to go back to all of that. For those of you that were here, you can connect what I'm saying right now with what I said yesterday, I believe. Let me get your reactions if you were here yesterday. Are we here? Oyinda, Oyinola, sorry. I think you were here yesterday. Kemi, you were here yesterday. Let me get your reactions. Okay, good. Can you connect what I'm saying right now with what we said yesterday? I just want to make sure we are following. All right, lovely. Now, you need to create a particular project that would be your priority. First of all, there could be a list of them, but there has to be something that. And when we talk about projects are usually short term, yeah. They are not lifelong things. They are not um, consistent routines that you would have to keep up for the rest of your life. They have a starting date and a finish date if you're familiar with project management. So those are the kind of things that fall under creative projects. If you're trying to finish school, I think that will probably fall under creative projects because it's 1 to 4 years. It has a benchmark. If you're trying to write a book, maybe 1 to 6 months or 1 to a year, they have deadlines, they have starting points and end points. Now, when we talk about ideal routines, these are the things you want to be a part of your life. You want as a part of your life in the long term. Say the ideal version of myself is someone with faith, um, LD. That means one of my ideal routine has to be working out consistently, eating healthy, right? Are we following? Are we following? I know the class feels a bit rushed, but bear with me. Okay, good. Now, what I said again, let me just repeat. Projects, short term, ideal routine, long term. You get so project has a start to finish. Ideal routines, you want them to be longer term or lifelong goals. If you have a spiritual goal, you want to develop, you want to build a closer relationship with God. That's a lifelong goal. It's not something that has a beginning and an end. It's you get so it would fall under ideal routine. That routine can be praying daily, reading the Bible daily, whatever the routine may be. But those things would fall under routine. So you have to have a clear project definition and a clear routine definition. Your ideal habits would just be as a result of whatever your ideal routines are. If your ideal routine is to read the Bible daily, then your ideal habits would obviously fall under that. So these are just the three things you have to first consider before even trying to set any goals. I gave a prompt yesterday. I don't know how many of us partook in that prompt. Um, I said to firstly to look back into life, list 5 things you're grateful for, things that you've accomplished that you're proud of rather. That kind of puts your mind in that, you know, realm of possibility. So you know you're capable of things. If you not just check the group, you would find the prompt. And then the second prompt was to list out everything you could possibly imagine that you want out of life without any restrictions. Like if you had no restriction, no, you didn't need money, you didn't need time, you didn't need anything. If there was no restrictions, what would be the things you want out of life? A minimum of 20. Those were the 2 prompts I gave. Now, out of all of this, I want you to envision what the best possible version of your life could look like. And when I say envision, I want you to be as specific as possible. You don't have to do it now, but keep that in mind. You should do it after the class. And this goes to literally anything. You would have to just think about what a random day 10 years from now would look like in your life. How are you waking up? How are you feeling that morning? What does your day look like? What are you doing in the morning? What are your morning routines? Are you waking up at 5 a.m.? You take a morning stroll, you go to the gym, you come back, you freshen up, you have breakfast, you head out to a meeting by 9. What does your day look like? How is it structured? What car are you driving? The latest BMW, and you're heading to your business to check in on the doings of the day, the affairs of the day. Your business has a yearly turnover of $10 million, whatever that goal may be. You have a personal equity of $10 million. You have assets worth $5 million. Whatever it is those goals are, As inconceivable as it seems, as long as it's something that you can envision, just imagine it. What you want your ideal life to be 10 years from now. Are you waking up in the morning, you're working out, you head into your hospital? Just imagine whatever it look like, every single detail you can think of, and write it down like you're actually narrating a day in your life. So that's an exercise for after this class. But yeah, with that in mind, you have a clear idea of how the life you envision for yourself would look like. Moving down to step two, when setting goals, you would want to consider constraints. In project management, we're taught three things. Time, we're taught about three constraints rather: time, scope, and cost. These are the major three constraints that affect goal set, the project or the objective to be achieved. And in terms of goal setting, these are usually a similar constraint. For me now, when setting up this class, I think I I didn't identify the proper constraints when it came to scope. Yeah, I wasn't properly prepared, so to say. I thought I was. Apparently, I wasn't. So I didn't fully understood establish the scope of getting this done. And let me just give an example, a real life example in terms of goal. You want to read 12 books at the end of the year. You want to learn a new skill. Let's say your constraints to learn those things is time, or your assumed constraint is time. Yeah, let's assume that's an actual constraint. But you want to make this possible, right? You want to make that goal of reading 12 books or learning a new skill possible. What do? You think of a way to mitigate it, right? You think of a way to mitigate it. That's the importance of establishing constraints. If I say I don't have the time to read 12 books, now by the time we've broken this down based on the system we went through yesterday, I just have to be reading, let's say, 10 pages a day. I will still come back to this for those of us that don't understand. And I say I don't have the time to read 10 pages a day. That's very unlikely. If I say I want to learn a new skill and my constraint is time and cost, if I'm able to identify that, I can find ways to mitigate these constraints. So basically, anything that could hinder you or hold you back from the progress of your goal would serve as constraint. And the reason why it's important to identify them is so you can create mitigation techniques to counter them. These are all part of the boring parts of the class. So forgive me for rushing through all of this. I just want us to get to the actual main parts. Well, I need you to have an idea of where we're going to. And like I said, we still have a lot to cover, so I'm kind of in a rush a little bit. Please forgive me for that. Just pick up as much as you can. Um, I want to show us an illustration of something and why it's important to establish your constraints. Let's assume this is the ideal outcome you want out of life. This is an alternative outcome. This is you. 1 year down the line, there isn't much difference. 2 years down the line, there isn't much difference. 5 years down the line, now the difference is starting to be obvious. 10 years down the line, now that's a whole lot of difference. This is what happens when you let constraints get in the way of your ideal outcome. My outcome now was to read 12 books, right? Like I said earlier, I told myself I don't have time. Year one, I don't have time. Year two, I don't have time. Year five, I don't have time. Year 10. If I was to read 12 books every year for 10 years, I would have read a total of 120 books. Now I'm reading zero because those constraints that are allowed to hinder me from this progress ended up compounding. The same is true for anything. You want to learn a new skill. The further you deviate from the ideal outcome that you want, and the longer you do that, the harder it gets to close that gap. So you want to be able to identify these constraints early and create a way to mitigate them so that you don't end up having an alternative outcome different from the ideal outcome that you want. Am I making sense so far? Charts, am I making sense so far? Are we following? I'm not saying you guys in the chat, everyone is quiet. Okay, okay. At least some people are following. That's good enough for me. Now, once you go to the final thing you need to consider when setting your goals, we've covered establishing an objective. We've covered establishing constraints and why you need to establish constraints so you can mitigate them, right? The final thing is premise. And basically, when we talk about premise, it's I remember I said something yesterday that when you're setting your goals for the year, it's best to pick somewhere within 1 to 4. And the reason I said that is because our brain tends to get overwhelmed when we are focused on too many things. I know you have a question about other goals. Deborah, I don't know if you're here and what to do about them. We'll address that in the next part of this same workshop today. But first things first, your major goal you should have just a small set of priorities. That's why I said pick a particular project to work on at a time, and then pick the ideal routine that would enable that project to come to light. I would explain all of this further, but just get the general scope first. The reason for that is the first stage of actually doing anything new, creating any new habits, creating any new routine, is focused efforts is required. The brain requires focused efforts to make these things possible. If it's focused on one thing, it's very easy for it to fully understand it and take it up to the subconscious, which is autopilot. But if it's constantly scattered, trying to prioritize too many things, you would really get stuck here. Your brain would be overwhelmed and tired because how many things is it trying to accomplish in a given time? But if it's just one thing, fine, it would be a little bit stressful, but with compounded efforts, it would learn and move that to autopilot. There are certain things we do these days that you don't really think about them before you do it. Do you think about, oh, I need to turn the handle of my door before my door opens? No, your subconscious already knows that once I turn the handle, it opens. If you put a key, do you have to think about turning the key before you turn it, or you just put the key and you turn it without thinking? That's what it means to be on autopilot. If every morning do, you pray, you read the Bible, let's assume that's your normal routine now. You would realize that most of the time you don't think about it before you do it. Now, if you're trying to create that habit fresh, if you're trying to create that routine as a fresh part of your life, let's assume I want to create an ideal morning routine. I pray, read the Bible, meditate, shower, journal. I've listed like 6 things that I need to do that morning. And on top of that, I have to wake up at 5 a.m. And I'm trying to just accomplish all these things all at once. The brain would be stressed out. It's not impossible, but it's overwhelming. So what you want to do is focus on one. You have like 6 morning routines you want to add to your routine. Focus on the smallest task, waking up at 5 a.m. Within a week or two, your brain will master the focused efforts part of this, and it's going to pilot. I don't know how many of you are like that, whereby a particular time of the morning, you just wake up. Your alarm doesn't need to ring. You've created that routine for yourself. Even before the alarm rings, you open your eyes. You've tuned your brain to move that sort of pilot. When that is there, you can add to that routine and keep stacking. The same thing applies for your projects. If you want to start a YouTube channel, for instance, and that's like a major project for the year, the first thing you want to do is create a routine that requires the least amount of focused efforts. You don't want to scatter your brain too much. You just want to start with something that would develop that much memory. So the first step can be okay, every morning between or every night between 8 p.m. and 9 p.m. every day, I would work on a video to post once a week. You want to create a routine of being someone who works out. You don't have to start with 2 hours at the gym. You can start with, okay, every day I'll just do 30 minutes at the gym and I'll come back home and I'll do it 3 times a week. It seems a whole lot more easier. Even if it's 2 times a week, you can start with that. Once your brain gets used to that focused effort part, it moves it to autopilot. Now, when that goes to autopilot, you can add a new skill, yeah, a new habit, a new routine, whatever. You add it here. This one moves to identity. This one moves to autopilot. And before you know, you keep stacking and stacking and stacking until you get the ideal version you want for yourself. Are we following what I'm saying so far? I'm really, really sorry for rushing this class, but it has to be done if we have any chance of covering what we are going to cover. All these parts are not even the important parts, really. We are getting to the main part now, but you have to understand so far. So are we following? Have we understood all of this? Okay, okay. Um, Mary, you said you're lost at the premise parts. Let's address that real quick. What parts are you lost? You can turn on your mic and talk. Mary, you said you're lost. Yeah, I said turn on your mic and let me know what's you're missing out on, so I can fill in the gap for you.
Okay, I said I'm lost in this premise part from the identity. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes, that's what I'm lost in. I'm not getting what
Okay,
you're saying concerning it.
okay. Hold on, let me rephrase that. When our brain learns something new, it starts with it being a difficult task for the brain, which requires focused habits, focused efforts, whatever it may be, whether it's a goal you're trying to accomplish, you want to start learning to read daily, you want to study more, you want to learn a new skill, you want to work out, literally anything new that you put your brain through, it requires focused efforts for the brain to assimilate that data. Now, after your brain has assimilated the repeated focused effort for a while, emphasis on repeated, because for your brain to learn something, you have to repeat it long enough. Once that's done that long enough, it moves that task to the subconscious, and the subconscious runs on autopilot. Like I gave the example of things you do on a daily basis. Like when you open the door, you don't think about, I need to hold the door and turn the handle for the door to open. I need to put the key and turn the key for the key to unlock the door. You don't really think about these things. You just know that once you put the key, you turn it. You don't even think about it, just do it, and it just happens. Sorry about that. That's because the brain has learned over time to move that focus habits into autopilot. The same is true for someone who prays every day. If you're someone who prays every day, or someone who studies every day, or someone who reads every day, you find very little resistance to it. It's just you. It becomes your habits, it becomes who you are. And that's when the autopilot has moved to identity. When you repeat long enough and your subconscious has gotten so used to it, it just becomes who you are. If at first you are learning a new habit, like I said, it requires focused effort. You're learning to read daily, or you're learning to let's say, open a YouTube channel and you want to create the habit of working on it every day for 1 hour. At first, it looks stressful. It takes a lot of time, a lot of effort. After a month or two, you just become someone who, like, once it's 8 p.m., you know that, okay, I have to be on my laptop working on my YouTube channel. It becomes a part of your autopilot routine. No matter what you're doing, as long as you're at home and it's 8 p.m., just pick up your laptop and start working. Over time, that compounds and builds to become who you are, your identity. And the more you keep stacking up those efforts of the kind of person you want to be, from your focused efforts to your autopilot to your identity, the more you are likely to get the ideal version of yourself, of who you want to be. I don't know if that makes sense. If the ideal version that you thought of yourself, the ideal version you want to be is someone who is fit. I'm going to use fitness because it's very popular and easy to assimilate example. You want to be fit. That means you have to create the habit of working out at least a few times a week, being on a calorie deficit and other stuff. At first, it looks hard, and then it moves to autopilot. You start to enjoy it. You start to do it every day. It becomes an habit. From there, it moves to become who you are. Just someone who works out, someone who stays fit, someone who has a healthy lifestyle. And from there, you get the version of you you want for that particular goal. Does that make more sense now? We've wasted a lot of time on this, and this is never the main things we are supposed to be addressing. Have we gotten that? Okay, good. So what we want to do is to keep widening the gap between our constraints, or to keep shortening the gap between our constraints and our objective. I'm going to take us down to the yearly parts, the yearly planning, because all this part is not even the important part of all of this. Now, on the yearly level, we've covered from the prompts I gave you, you would have covered the ideal life you want to live, the general life you're trying to design. I want to introduce a concept to you, which is reflect, reduce, and review. This is the system you actually need now to start planning the year. We are getting to the main part of all of this. Reflect, review, reduce. What does it mean? When you want to set a goal, the first thing you have to do is go up a level to understand where you are or where you're heading to, where you're coming from, the goal you have in mind, the goal you're trying to achieve. Then you break it down a level to the next actionable step. That's you reflect on this level, you review on this level, then you reduce it to this level. Also, one moment. Now, for the question that Mary asked me yesterday, she said, if you have multiple goals, how do you um how do you put them in check? Do you just focus on 1 to 4 goals? Like I said, you should have like 1 to 4 main goals. But she said, do you just focus on those 1 to 4 goals and ignore the other goals you have? Let's say you have spiritual goals, you have financial goals, you have career goals that you need to attain. No, you don't just throw all of that away. You classify them under the sub goals, and I will explain. I already told you about your creative project and your ideal routines. Now, goals that fall under your ideal routine should be under your sub goal. You get those long-term goals that you want to keep consistent in your life. Um, there could be lifestyle goals, fitness, spirituality, learning, basically long-term goals or ideal repeated routines. Even the short-term goals can still fall under here. If you're just going to keep like um small bits of it going, you can keep it under here. But the main goal for the year, the main things you want to focus on for the year, the main important projects that are short-lived. If you're trying to learn a skill, for instance, and the skill will take you 6 months to learn, That should be your main goal for the year. If you're trying to start up a business as one of your new resolution, you're trying to build a brand, you're trying to do something that just requires a short phase, it should be under your main goal. You get? Are we following? Are we following? So there's are we following? Where was I? Okay. I said when it comes to annual planning, the two things you need to consider your main goals and your sub goals. Your main goals would be the major goals you're driving for the year, the important things you need to achieve the dream life you want. And when I say the important things, we did something yesterday when I said list out the 10 most important things you need in order to achieve that dream life you want for yourself. So for those of us that were not here, add that to your prompts. After you've done these first three things I said, the 10 most important things you need to achieve that dream life that you said, okay, you want to have $10 million in that. So that means you have to have a skill that would fetch that amount of income, right? What is that skill? If that's what you need to learn this year, then probably start. If the skill requires you to get a certain amount of income to learn it, or you need a certain amount of time to finish a particular level you are on so you can get to the next level, that should be your main goal for the year. But you have to make sure that all these things are in alignment with your future goal. Now, in terms of the sub goal, you want to be fit, you break it down to your sub goal. You want to be more spiritually sound, that's part of your sub goal. There are constant routines that you have to keep up. You want to develop more discipline. Your sub goals can be mindset shifts, it could be habits. You want to develop more discipline, you want to be more consistent, be a more consistent version of yourself. That would be under your sub goal. So all these other lifelong things, things that you know will stick with you for a long time, you want to put them under your sub goals. Then your projects, your main goals should be short phases that you need to just hit so you can move on to the next step. You want to learn a skill so you can start into some amount of money. Okay, that's the first goal. You learn that skill. After you use that milestone, you move on to the next. And the reason why I said 1 to 4 is sometimes the goals that we are trying to make, you are trying to meet at the end of the year, can actually be achieved in a quarter, in 3 months. Why stretch it out? Stretching out your goal when it's not needed would only make you relax to that goal because it looks so far away. If I'm saying I can, okay, let's assume I want to learn a skill. I want to be a data analyst in 3 months. I don't know if that's a time frame, but let's assume it takes 3 months to be a data analyst. And I'm saying I would make it a yearly goal. I'll be so relaxed. I'll be like, I still have 12 months. I still have 52 weeks. I still have 365 days. I can make it happen. But if I know that goal can actually take 3 months, I break it down to 3 months and I keep it there. Then I put the next level for the next quarter. You get? But if it's just one big giant goal, depends on whatever your plan is, then just make it into one goal for the year, one main goal. Then chunk them down into quarterly levels. So one main goal and your sub goals. Then you chunk them down into quarterly milestones that you would like to hit. And this goes for the sub goals as well. So let's say for Q4, you want to, let me think of a big goal. Okay, you want to be a profitable trader by Q4, earning a minimum of $15K every month or $10K. So profitable trader earning $10,000, and I'm at a beginner level. I don't. This is not realistic. Although it's realistic for some people, sure, but let's leave that aside. But just trying to give you a blueprint of what I'm talking about. The third quarter, you say your goal is $5,000. The second quarter, your goal is $2,000. The first quarter, you want to focus on learning and backtesting. The same thing applies for any other goal you're trying to hit. Um, you want to finish a particular, you want to finish a particular skill set with, you want to have a top job in a particular skill set, but you're at zero level. You just simply chunk it down backwards from the outcome you want. I think the class is ending now. I will send another link immediately. Just stick with me.